And Madam Chair, we have no speakers in the queue.
Thank you. Seeing no more public comments, public comment is now closed, and I would like to make the motion to move this to continue call chair. And with that, roll call, please.
On that motion to continue this resolution to the call of the chair, Vice Chair Mandelman.
Aye.
Mandelman, aye. Member Safai. Safai, aye. Chair Chan.
Aye.
Chan, aye. We have 3 ayes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Mr. Clerk, please call the next item.
Yes. Item numbers 3 and 4 are resolutions authorizing the following as it relates to a property at 730 Stanyan. Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of multifamily housing revenue notes in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $90 million for the purpose of providing financing for the construction of the 160-unit multifamily rental housing project, approving the form of and authorizing the execution of the following: a funding loan agreement providing the terms and conditions of the construction loan from the construction funding lender to the city, and the execution and delivery of the construction notes; a project loan agreement providing the terms and conditions of the construction loan from the city to the borrower; an amended and restated funding loan agreement providing the terms and conditions of the permanent loan from the permanent funding lender to the city, and the execution and delivery of the permanent notes; an amended and restated project loan agreement providing the terms and conditions of the permanent loan from the city to the borrower, and a regulatory agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants for the subject project, authorizing the collection of certain fees, approving for purposes of Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended the issuance and sale of residential mortgage revenue notes by the city in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $90 million, approving modifications, changes, and additions to the documents, ratifying and approving any action heretofore taken in connection with the back-to-back loans, the notes, and the project, granting general authority to the city officials to take actions necessary to implement that resolution and related matters as defined. Item 4 is a resolution approving and authorizing the Director of Property and Director of the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development to enter into a ground lease for the property with 730 Stanyan Associates LP for a lease term of 75 years and one 24-year option to extend an annual base rent of $15,000 in order to construct a 160-unit multifamily rental housing development affordable to project to very low and low-income households, and an amended and restated loan agreement in an amount not to exceed approximately $69.5 million for a minimum loan term of 57 years to finance the development and construction of the project, adopting findings that the project and proposed transactions are consistent with the general plan and 8 priority policies of the Planning Code, adopting findings declaring that the property is exempt surplus land pursuant to the California Surplus Lands Act, determining that the less than market rent payable under the ground lease will serve public purpose by providing affordable housing for low-income households in need in accordance with the Administrative Code, and authorizing the Director of Property and or the Director of MoCD to execute the ground lease and the amended and restated loan agreement and make certain modifications to such agreements as defined, and take certain actions in furtherance of that resolution as defined. Members of the public who are joining us remotely and wish to comment on both these resolutions, please call 415-655-0001. Enter the meeting ID of 2604-967-6141. Then press pound twice. Once connected, press star 3 to enter the speaker line. A prompt will indicate that you have raised your hand, and when the system indicates you have been unmuted, there will be your signal to begin your comments. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I appreciate. And then today we have the Mayor's Office of Housing here making this presentation. But before you do go forward, I just wanted to make sure that recognize that Supervisor Dean Preston is here joining us today. And that, would you like us to go through the presentation first? Great, thank you, I appreciate it. So typically we will have the presentation from the Mayor's Office of Housing, and then we will have this item actually have the budget and legislative analyst report. So after that, then we'll back to questions and comments. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, supervisors. Omar Masri, project manager with MoCD, joined by MoCD Director Eric Shaw, Sheila Nicolopoulos, Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs, and Sarah Amaral, MoCD Director of Housing Development. We're here before you today for 2 items related to the development of a new 160-unit, 100% affordable housing development at 730 Stanyan Street in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood in District 5. The first item is a resolution to authorize issuance of tax-exempt bonds not exceeding $90 million to support the project. The second item is a resolution to authorize a ground lease from the city to the project sponsors, as well as a MoCD loan agreement of up to $69.5 million. The project site was previously a McDonald's restaurant bounded by Haight Street, Stanyan, and Waller Streets. The site was purchased by the city using community development block grants for $15.9 million and subsequently demolished. In September 2019, Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation and Chinatown Community Development Center were selected as co-sponsors. The sponsors worked through multiple community meetings and at MoCD's request revised the design from a 6-story building featuring 120 units to an 8-story building featuring 160 units. Stakeholders and neighbors were included in multiple community meetings throughout the development process. The sponsors also provided regular updates to the community electronically and during those meetings. In June 2022, the Planning Department issued entitlement approval utilizing State Senate Bill 35, SB 35, for affordable housing development. The sponsors submitted applications to the state's Housing and Community Development Department seeking $5 million in grants and $23 million in loans as part of the overall capital funding mix as a means to better leverage city affordable housing funds. Unfortunately, despite a desirable high-resource location and robust low-income affordability mix of unit income types, the funds were not awarded in a highly competitive funding round that was oversubscribed by a factor of 10 to 1 and favored other types of housing such as veterans housing and farm workers housing. In April 2023, the Citywide Affordable Housing Loan Committee recommended approval of $69.5 million in city loans. The community being funded today by today's approval would allow the construction of 160 100% affordable units with 20 units reserved for transitional aged youth, or TAY, including those experiencing homelessness, with a robust level of on-site supportive services and rent subsidies. 12 units are reserved for families experiencing homelessness with a similar rent subsidy structure and dedicated on-site supportive services. 32 units of deeply affordable units are reserved for project-based vouchers and leased through referrals from the SF Housing Authority. There will also be one manager's unit. And lastly, 95 general affordable lottery units will be subject to the city's preference, including for certificate of preference holders, formerly displaced San Franciscans, and those that live or work in San Francisco. Income restrictions would range from 25% of area median income to a maximum 80% of area median income in a range of units from studios all the way to 3-bedroom units. The ground floor would include a child care center that would serve on-site residents and the neighborhood, a food hall incubator space for around 4 entrepreneurs at the corner of Haight and Stanyan, a micro-retail space along the Haight Street retail corridor, and a neighborhood-serving community center at the corner of Stanyan and Waller. MoCD plans to work with the sponsors to further refine the commercial space plan through the estimated 26 months of construction to recruit tenants for these commercial spaces other than the child care center. The project financing includes a mix of city, private, and federal funds, as shown here, including a federal home loan bank loan of $1 million, private bank loans of $10.3 million, federal tax credits and partner equity of $72.4 million, and lastly, $69.5 million in city loans for your consideration today, which includes $8.5 million in the specific city loan to support 19 no-place-like home units for those with higher acuity challenges, including those that are chronically homeless. Supervisors, a crucial part of the project financing includes state tax credits and bonds that require loan closing by June 12th of this year in order to ensure those funds remain available for development. With your support, the sponsors look forward to construction starting within the next few weeks and project completion in September 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Good morning, Supervisors. Nick Menard from the Budget Legislative Analyst Office. So item 4 is a resolution that approves a ground lease between the city and 730 Stanyan Associates LP, as well as a loan agreement for $69.5 million. This is all related to the 730 Affordable Housing Project, 730 Stanyan Affordable Housing Project. We detail the budget for the development on page 12 of our report, where you'll see that the city's funding about half the development cost, with the rest being funded by state tax credits and a private loan. We also discuss some irregularities from our perspective in the procurement process used to identify the developers for this project in the report. So this LP is a joint venture between Chinatown Community Development and Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation. There's I think a couple issues stand out to us as unusual that are kind of worth talking about here. One is that there was an RFQ used to identify developers in 2019. There were 3 respondents. They were scored. There was a clear top scorer. And then the department issued a supplemental question due on Christmas Eve, 7 days later, that asked about, experience implementing MOHCD housing preferences and doing community outreach. Those questions have since been incorporated into MOHCD solicitations, but I do think it's unusual to issue a supplemental question after scores have been developed. And then the other issue is that the selection memo that we looked at, when we tabulated the scores that showed the results of the supplemental question were that the CCDC and TNDC were actually achieved a tying score due to that supplemental question. The scores, when we added them up, didn't actually add to a tie. So it's for that reason we had recommended the underlying scoring sheets. We got a summary of the scores from the department last night, which is not what we asked for, and I think you guys also got that too. So I did want to note those issues. I do think, there's a practical reality here of this project and the timing of the financing and the need for affordable housing, weighing that against the issues we've identified here. I think, in conversation with the department, one additional issue came to light, which is that this is not treated as a Chapter 21 professional service contract. If it were, they'd be obligated to work with the top scoring proposer. That is not the case for these development loans. And in fact, the way that the RFP was written, or the RFQ was written, was that there's a panel that will score the respondents, and then the MOHCD director tells the mayor, what the scores are, and then they select whoever they want off the list. The ranking doesn't control the selection. And I think that is not good government. I think the board should amend Chapter 120 of the Administrative Code to clarify and set a new policy that that the ranking of these the outcome of the scores and the ranking of respondents to these kind of solicitations, to have them actually matter and control who the mayor's office of housing selects to work with to develop a property. So that's my final analysis of this. I do think that there's a legislative solution going forward. But this is otherwise a standard loan agreement for gap financing.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify that really quick. And some of the issues that identify specifically in this item right now has also been actually published in the audit conducted by the budget and legislative analyst in 2021. Can you confirm that?
We did note some of these issues in our 2021 audit of the Mayor's Office of Housing.
And I also just additionally wanted to question. I just want to clarify. We receive the documents on that are labeled as the final 730 stanyan scores yesterday, and And it was last night at 10:53 p.m. that we received that. I think that's what you were referencing as the request of the budget and legislative analyst is to ask for the score sheets. And we received that last night. But I think what you just said earlier is that this is actually not what you're asking for. Can you clarify?
Yeah, I think what this shows is a summary of the tallying scores. What we had put in the recommendation and talked about with staff was the individual scoring sheets, right? Because there's this question of whether the numbers even add up to a tie that is not answered in the documentation that they provided. So I think that that's kind of that was our thinking in requesting that documentation.
Understood. Thank you. I mean, I think that it is problematic, but Supervisor Preston.
Thank you, Chair Chan, and thank you to MoCD and to the BLA for the presentations. And I appreciate the opportunity to address this project. And I will just start by saying, and I think Mr. Menard laid out the importance of affordable housing in our city and our district, and I certainly share that view, especially on this is one of the most important affordable housing developments certainly in my district, and so I definitely wanted to be here to express my ongoing strong support for building affordable housing in this location. Really briefly on the background, because I think it's important just to take the lens back a little bit. The presentation from MoCD outlined some of this. The city acquired the site in 2018, as was noted. It was vacant until May of 2020. It became a initially controversial safe sleep site. Opened May 2020. I say initially controversial because I think once it was opened, it was hands down the best safe sleep site opened during the pandemic and recognized as such, and even folks who were skeptical of it came to appreciate the importance of it. That lasted there for a year. And so that closed in June of 2021, and then it's been vacant since then. And I just want to acknowledge and recognize the neighbors who MoCD's heard from, the nonprofit developers have heard from, our office has, who there's just a tremendous amount, I think, of frustration around the inactivity of the site. And while we've talked about the RFQ process here on the development, there was also a whole RFP, I believe, process on the temporary use, including a tremendous amount of time and energy from community members putting forward a temporary use that went through one of the strangest RFP processes, as this one is unusual, that is not before you today, but also left one sort of predates my time in office, but left folks kind of in the community scratching their heads after repeated community meetings and two robust plans that were put forward and questions about the scoring, and that whole process was ultimately withdrawn without having any use whatsoever on an interim basis. So we have a big lot. It is not just an eyesore and source of frustration for this community, but fortunately everyone came together around the safe sleeping site, so that is a positive in the history of the site, as is its acquisition and as hopefully is the development that will be there. But I say all that to say that I feel very fortunate, and I think we as a city are very fortunate, with the incredible patience, commitment, and support from the neighbors around this affordable housing site. And this is not a story that you sometimes hear. in parts of the state and even parts of the city of community rallying against affordable housing. This is the exact opposite. You have a community that is wanting the affordable housing desperately, has come together, neighborhood groups and others, to support this 100%. And the things that I will now articulate in the amendment we had circulated and hope the committee will take actually addresses some of the services that the community has been led to believe will be there and that are not reflected in the plan. So, all that background to say, I do share the view that we should be moving this forward. I also think there are questions that have been raised that are fair questions. I understand the concerns raised in the BLA report, share some of those. I agree fully with the recommendation that the underlying scoring sheets be produced. I understand we got a summary of that last night, and I know there'll be discussions on that point, either today or at future hearings. The structural change that Mr. Menard is suggesting around the selection process is an interesting one. We are holding tomorrow a hearing on the audit that the BLA conducted at our request of MoCD's selection processes and criteria and so forth, and I hope we can touch on it there, or like, I think there is a structural issue with a lack of sort of an oversight process and some risks of how decisions are made. And then when we see some of this, doesn't mean anything untoward happened or didn't, but it's a little hard to get that information, and I think the public deserves that. And I am committed to getting as much transparency as possible, but without being in the way of moving forward with breaking ground, hopefully in the next month or so. The issue I wanted to raise, though, that I think does require some clarity and amendment today, is the inclusion in the ground floor space of a drop-in center for transitional age youth for TAY. From the earliest iterations of this project, a TAY drop-in center has been part of the plan, and we circulated to documents that show slides from 4 separate community meetings, multiple loan documents, representations in state applications that clearly show TAY drop-in as part of the plans on this site. We are concerned, especially because there was a temporary use of TAY drop-in there was an RFP on. HSH selected the providers, and then 2 weeks before it was supposed to open, it was mysteriously, the plug was pulled on that on this very site. So when we see clear representations, and that's not on MoCD, but when we see clear representations of TAY services on the ground floor repeatedly, no announcement of a change of plans on that, but then we see before us a presentation which has sort of shifted that to some broad categories like micro retail. That's concerning, and I'm just that their MoCD presentation now includes, the micro retail category, but not any explicit reference to TAY drop-in center or services that are desperately needed in the Haight is a problem. So I would like, through the chair, to ask, and I've flagged this previously for Director Shaw, so this doesn't come, and I know community has given this feedback to MoCD as well. So I would, through the chair, like to ask MoCD to confirm their commitment to TAY drop-in space and services here, and also, regardless of those, I think it should be in the documentation as well. That's why we've circulated a proposed amendment, which would be non-substantive, that I hope the committee can move, just so the board's clearly on record supporting that TAY services that were really important to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And would Director Shaw or maybe your team like to respond to this commitment on TAY services on sites? Thank you, Director Shaw. I appreciate it.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Eric Shaw, Director of San Francisco Mayor's Office for Housing and Community Development. First, I want to say happy Affordable Housing Month. This is the happiest month for me outside of September, when my birthday is. As I've shared with you, Supervisor Preston, with the rest of the committee, The financing and program, well, the financing of this building has become increasingly complicated. We have been working right now, and the timing of the delivery of the units. And we have directed our partners, CCDC and TNDC, to really focus on getting the building out of the ground right now. There were some solicitations that were done initially around senior services. There was some consideration on the issuing of a solicitation, but we have not been getting responses outside of the Early Childhood Center for the social services component. Given the fact that this has also happened during COVID, understanding operating budgets and capacity of our nonprofit partners in all these spaces, and priorities around economic recovery, that as Mr. Masri shared, we have directed the development team in partnership with our city partners and with MoCD on understanding the most implementable use strategy for programs. But the focus right now is actually the construction of the building. And so I think understanding why previous solicitations for services weren't received, understanding the economics of this, so just understanding once again that for all of our space for commercial, there still is a cost associated with it. It's incorporated into the overall budget. That's something that we're continuing to work on, the appropriate program and finances to meet an active and community serving ground floor use.
If I could follow up, thank you, Chair Chan. So just to be clear, there has not been a solicitation, though, specifically on the TAY services, correct?
That is correct.
Right. So there have been on some other, like the senior services.
Yes, correct.
And understanding perhaps because of the pandemic, there wasn't the response we might have hoped for.
Right.
So I understand the concern. What I don't understand is why TAY services are removed from this presentation. It and especially just given the history in this site,
right,
with some interference, let's just say, with TAY services that were planned and then removed, and now we have planned TAY services. Like, I think for my constituents are very concerned that the omission of TAY in the presentations indicates a lack of commitment to going ahead and doing the TAY solicitation. We all know that if you don't get someone responding to solicitations, you're going to need the flexibility to fill the space. So can you is there a commitment to doing a solicitation for the TAY drop-in center as presented over and over again in these documents and to the community?
I think there's a commitment to having a responsive program that includes community serving retail and working in coordination with our agency partners on the best program that meets the community serving goals and activates the commercial space and meets the requirements needed to be in alignment with the finances and commercial underwriting guidelines that happen.
Okay, well, I will predict in response to that your inboxes will be overflowing with community that will hear that, right, and want to take every effort to make sure that it is communicated that TAY should be at the top of that list as promised to the community. I will say to Chair Chan and the committee, I think it's absolutely essential that the board make the amendment that we circulated in light of what sounds to me like not ruling it out, but not committing to it, which is a real big change in a community that needs TAY services. And I think the lack of clarity is such a contrast to, like, what, maybe I can just ask, like, what changed here? Because
we had a pandemic, sir, and we're trying to understand the economics of the space, and we understood that the solicitations we had for services, we did not get the responses that we thought. And once again, the commitment and priority I've laid out as MoCD director is actually getting the building built right now and understanding that during the period that we have in the construction, that we have the capacity to, and we are making the time to understand the appropriate program for community serving uses, for commercial uses, understand the integration of the early childhood center that's happening right now, and advancing some of the community serving and economic recovery priorities of the administration.
So it sounds like you're preempting a solicitation process and determining that there isn't TAY services that submit anything. Is that what's happening?
Sir, I'm not saying that there's a preemption. I'm saying that we're understanding that we had COVID, we're understanding finances, we're understanding the fact that we have space available that's identified for community serving, and that we are going to continue to work with our city partners and with the community on the appropriate use that activates that space and meets the commercial underwriting and finance guidelines.
Thank you. I won't belabor the point. I will submit to colleagues that hopefully we can make that amendment, and then would encourage community members to do what you've been doing in terms of demanding the very thing that has been promised over and over. And I just will reiterate my thanks to all the community members who have seen these twists and turns, who have, lost, came close to losing faith on this process over and over again. I also, before handing the mic back over, Madam Chair, just want to say that the developers here, TNDC and CCDC, have led an extraordinary outreach. I cannot overstate how robust their process has been, not just at formal or required sessions, but in responding to inquiries from a very engaged community about this project, all the way through coming to all the temporary activations we did, even the one day get your booster on site with Department of Public Health, and thank you for facilitating those, Director Shaw. TNDC and CCDC have been at all of those, showing the project, answering questions, and really working tirelessly to bring this to fruition. So I share some of the community frustrations on the process. I could say a lot more, and I won't, about how we got here. All that said, I know a lot of MoCD staff have worked really hard to work out the financing, bring this to hopefully the finish line soon, and the nonprofit developers have been tremendous partners for the city. So I will leave it on that positive note and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Mandelman.
Thank you, Chair Chan. Normally on an affordable housing project in another supervisor's district, I would just sort of defer. I will say that in the year that I have inherited some of Supervisor Preston's former constituents, I've heard a lot about two projects. I've heard a lot about UCSF, and I've heard a lot about 730 Stanyan. And the feedback I have gotten about 730 Stanyan has been decidedly mixed. Including from people who are unhappy that it has gone from 6 to 8 stories, people who are unhappy that it has the concentration of formerly homeless folks, people who are worried about youth, people who are worried about chronic homelessness, and people who are very worried about the drop-in center on the ground floor. And, I have generally received this feedback. I don't find the concerns about height particularly moving. I am not. I don't think it works to say that we're not going to house formerly homeless people or focus on youth. The one piece of feedback that I have wrestled with and have not thought that I needed to reach some sort of conclusion about was what was supposed to happen on the ground floor. Because as some of our colleagues have pointed out, as I have pointed out, we as a city have not consistently shown that the addition of homeless services to a neighborhood improves that neighborhood. We can do it in a way that improves conditions for everybody, housed and unhoused alike, and we often do it in ways that are negative for the surrounding neighborhood. And I had thought until 5 minutes before this meeting that I didn't really need to figure this out because we're not even dealing with that. We're just dealing with the building stuff, and we're deferring these questions for a later day. I'm not prepared to deal with that question right now. It may well be that I am in full agreement after I look at all of this and have to make a decision with my colleague Supervisor Preston, but I have not had the opportunity to have the kind of robust engagement with the different sides of this question, or even to understand what is at stake or the history. And so although I'm eager to support the items 3 and 4, I'm not going to be able to support that amendment today. Not saying it shouldn't be ground floor TAY drop-in, but just wanting to better understand what that's going to look like and how it's going to ensure that that is that the impacts on the neighborhood are positive.
Thank you. Supervisor Safai.
I guess my first question, just through the chair to Supervisor Preston, is can you just talk a little bit again about what the amendment is specifically designed to do?
Thank you, Supervisor Safai. So the amendment would have the board add a resolve clause with the Board of Supervisors urging MoCD to include TAY services as a ground floor use, as they've previously in various documents, both in representations to the state and to the community, and in loan applications, said they were going to do. So it's really just keeping that promise that strangely has now vanished for reasons that don't make much sense to me based on the presentation, but that's what it would do. It would. I mean, my understanding from talking to the city attorney, we don't have the ability to bind them to do that, but it would make clear that the Board of Supervisors would like that part of the commitment to continue.
Right, we're not, and I think also add to that is that we're not amending the actual loan agreement. We are amending the legislation that comes with the loan agreement, or to present the loan agreement. And Supervisor President, could you just read out loud, if it's okay? Like,
Yeah. That's what
could you just read out loud? And also, it's my pet peeve, like about acronym. And it's really, TAY stands for Transitional Age Youth Drop-In Center. And so therefore, it's also my recommendation in your amendments language that you actually spell that out, because there's no reference of that throughout the legislation. So in your amendment, you may actually just want to spell out Transitional Age Youth Drop-In Center service as the ground floor. That's my friendly amendment to your amendment. Supervisor Preston.
Thank you, and I think that's a great suggestion. As you said, if the term wasn't previously in the resolution, which I think you're correct, it wasn't, so certainly receptive to that. But so the resolution, and with that change, would be at page 6, lines 22, and page 7, lines 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. You'd have further resolved that the Board of Supervisors urges MoCD to include transitional aged youth services as a ground floor use, as MoCD previously represented in prior loan applications, including an approved pre-development loan from October 2020, a California Tax Credit Allocation Committee application from 2022, and representations made in multiple community meetings.
So can I just continue to ask a couple questions? So I heard what Supervisor Mandelman said, but this doesn't seem to be binding. It's urging. I just wanted to put that out there just so we're clear, correct? Is that right, Madam City Attorney? We don't have the ability to direct departments. We can urge, but we can't make them do that, right?
Deputy City Attorney Ann Pearson, that's right. Supervisor, this is a non-binding urging statement.
Okay. But what I do have a question, just because it's worded this way, and again, this is me coming into this new, it's not my district, I haven't been involved. am very familiar with this space. I know the community and the city has been waiting a significant amount of time for something to happen, and it seems like it's pretty far along. I guess my question is, because we do this when we present for funding, was it presented that there would be services in this site for transitional age youth? Was that part of the application for tax credit funding? Because I know that when we've done multiple projects in our district, we presented, there will be childcare, there will be X, Y, and so I know that working with MOHCD and others are very loath to change the program after the loan application's approved, because it could jeopardize future opportunities. And so I just want to understand that a little bit better. Mr. Director, yes.
Okay. So can you repeat the question right now? Is it
So
binding
my-
because it was in the text?
Well, I guess, no, first of all, I want to ask, because I'm not familiar with the history of this project, was it presented by the city and the developer
Right.
when you were applying for tax credits? Was it presented that there would be transitional age use services offered as ground floor or in the building at this site in general? Was that part of the loan document applications?
I can defer. I'm going to defer to Omar Masri on that.
Okay, or whomever can answer that question.
Thank you. In the state tax credit applications, we describe the project overall, including the commercial space, including these uses, but the focus of the application is on the number of units, the affordability mix, and that's the core focus of those competitive applications.
Right, of
less so
course.
the makeup of the ground floor space.
But did you mention in the loan documents that you would have transitional age youth services?
For Bohan, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Okay. So my question is, if you were to change or not fulfill that, does it potentially jeopardize the project or potentially jeopardize future projects because you've represented that this would be a service? I mean, and again, the reason I say that is because when we were doing our Upper Yard project just recently, there was some question about whether or not we would be able to deliver some of the retail space and or the childcare. And we were able to fulfill that and ensure that that was there. So I just want to know. Yes.
Good afternoon. Sarah Emerald, Director of Housing Development for the MoCD. For the commercial space, we are not tied to include and maintain programming. It's just the point in time of which we are hoping for our programming of the site. So commercial space services are not actually a requirement to continue after the application.
But they were part of the proposal. They were part of
Correct.
the application. They were part of the public.
Tax credits don't pay for commercial space. MoCD pays for commercial space.
Correct.
So
Correct.
therefore, if it changes, it's on us and how we want to function it. I'll also say that we're not necessarily saying that TAY is completely out. We're just saying that we would like to go back to the community and have a more robust conversation with the community about services, which is why on your presentation and on subsequent slides today, the information around neighborhood serving space is assuming to be a more conducive, more robust type of services and not just key to one particular. We're looking to maybe hopefully have some type of like family resource center, seniors, like it's supposed to be this thought process with the community now that we know the outcomes of the market and the economy of how to revisit this collectively and think about it wholly.
Can I ask you a question? Because I don't understand that last comment. What do you mean the outcomes of the economy?
After COVID, sir.
But again, I understand.
Meaning that because of funding implications and how we have had to work over the last couple of years and things that have changed and actual nonprofit services budgets changing, just revisiting that completely to holistically to see where else their opportunities are to advance what we would like.
I understand what you're saying. It doesn't make sense to me, though. The reason it doesn't make sense to me is because if this is a nonprofit community serving space, you're going to have a nonprofit in that space that's going to require subsidy and government funding. And so we have TAY providers in the city, we have senior service providers, we have family resource centers, but all of them come to the city, almost
Correct.
all of them. So I don't understand the comment about the realities of COVID changing if you were to say we were going to have a restaurant there, and now that restaurant can't access loans that the federal government were going to provide, and the market has drawn up in terms of workforce, that would make more sense to me. But we just opened, and I see Emily Cohen in the audience from HSH. I mean, we just opened an 80-unit TAY serving property in my district with multiple service providers. So I guess that's what I'm.
I guess my point is,
understand.
when you look at the budget year and when we have to go in for a review, all of those nonprofits that are applied to the city, they still need time to review and update that. considering the changes of the financing structure with losing HCD and losing state function, our goal was just to get the property to construction.
Which I understand.
So therefore, afterwards, now that we start construction in June, new budget cycle starts in July, we can start having a more robust conversation with our community partners around how to program that space.
I understand that, but I don't understand the economics changing. That doesn't make sense to me. But I hear you. Thank you. I would just say it seems to me like the amendment that's in front of us today is not necessarily a hostile amendment. It's an amendment to say this is what was proposed. Please continue to consider that, given the constraints that you might have based on funding of existing organizations and applications. So thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Safai. And with that, let's go to public comments on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public who wish to speak on these two resolutions and are joining us in person should line up now along the curtains. For those who have joined us remotely and haven't already done so, dial *3 if you wish to enter the speaker line. And for those already in the queue, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted, and that'll be your signal to begin your comments. Sir.
Thank you. My name's Calvin Welch, and I'm co-chair of the Coalition for a Complete Community, a coalition made up of neighborhood residents, and neighborhood organizations, and service providers in the Haight-Ashbury that have, since 2019, sought to parallel the city's planning process with a community planning process. And until the 4th of April of this year, those two processes track very well together. It is important for Supervisor Mendelson to understand, who we met with late last year, that Supervisor Preston's amendment is keeping faith with a public planning process done at the neighborhood level. The need for the site, for affordable housing on the site, is not only for new people to our neighborhood, but to meet the needs of existing residents in the neighborhood. And it was that basis upon which a community plan was put forward, with a 3-part usage of populations to be served: seniors, families, and TAY, which were the demonstrated need in the neighborhood, and services open to not only residents but to the rest of the neighborhood that were also critically needed. The supervisor's resolution amendment keeps faith with that community planning process, and I would urge the board to accept it. Thank you.
Thank you much, Calvin Welch. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon, supervisors. Sherilyn Adams, Executive Director, Larkin Street Youth Services. Larkin Street has been actively participating in the CCC meetings that Calvin referenced. We have been active in the Haight since we opened a drop-in center there a long time ago, very small. And we've been working with Homeless Youth Alliance, with Progress Foundation, with a whole bunch of folks on this project. We urge and support this building so much. We need this building, and we support the amendment offered by Supervisor Preston for there to be consideration of the drop-in space for TAY. That has been a long part of the conversation. It is actively needed in the district and at that site. And I strongly, strongly urge you to support the amendment and to understand that this is a critical need for TAY in the Haight. Thank you.
Thank you much, Sherilyn Adams. Next speaker, please.
Hi, supervisors. My name is Marnie Regan. I also work for Larkin Street, but I'm representing HESPA. I'm the co-chair of HESPA and the chair of the TAY subcommittee of HESPA. And again, we also strongly support the TAY drop-in space. This has been promised for years, and that's the whole reason why HESPA has in it our budget advocacy strategy support services dollars for this drop-in. We were told that if we secure the funding through HSH/DPH for supportive services dollars, that's what was needed to secure this actual physical space. So we've been operating under that promise. It's part of our budget advocacy. it also obviously reflects the need and the support of the community in the Haight. So again, on behalf of HESPA, strongly support Supervisor Preston's amendment, and we really hope that you support this and make this happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Marnie Regan. Next speaker, please.
My name is Yolanda Catzalco. I'm 72 years old. I want to ask some questions. Where I live, there's a safe site. What's going to happen to them? Some people, most of the homeless want to be housed. But what's going to happen to the tent city? Do they want to be housed? Are they going to be housed? Where are they going to go? The second thing I would like to ask is, I don't know if it's Housing Urban Development HUD or state or local legislation that says anything about equity, about the fact about how many percentage of each ethnic group. I'm Mexican American. What percentage of ethnic group is supposed to be housed? Anybody? Nobody? People that have connections? Who? I think that there should be some kind of mechanism to the lottery where maybe all one ethnic group, Latinos, then African Americans or African Americans first, Asians, indigenous, that they all be placed on an equal level. There's been about 30% drop in Hispanics in the mission. So I really hope that tomorrow you discuss that, because it bothers me. It bothers me seeing all these undocumented, poor, homeless Latinos walking the streets and a lot of them work. And the other thing I would like to say, I too believe that if the community wanted something, you can't turn your back on them. I'm for an all-inclusive San Francisco, but if the community wants to have the residence house, they should have that also. It's almost impossible under capitalism, but we got to do what we can with the situation, whatever
Thank you
we
much
have.
for your comments. Next speaker, please.
So when you look at the online at this website, 730 Stanyan, you look at it, right? You see old San Francisco, you see vintage photos of the city advertising this new place that's going to be built there in Haight-Ashbury. And, you know, it harkens back to a time where the city was great. This city used to be great. It was real. It was, you know, it was what I came to. When I came to San Francisco, that's what you saw. So if you go look at 730 Stanyan, you can see that. The mayor's office advertised these two, put an RFQ out there for a developer. They said they want a developer to develop this building. They chose Chinatown Development Corporation and a Tenderloin, right? It sounds like a very benign developer. It sounds like a very helpful. It sounds like it wants to, you know, like it's a developer that wants to help the city. But you have to hone down and look at these people. What are they doing? This is a developer that's after money. It's after money. It wants to make money. Okay, that's all what it's about. So, is there an audit? Can you audit these people? You know, can you audit the Chinatown developers and the Tenderloin developers? Because you know they're working under this rubric, under this name that says, you know, they're working for the city, but I think they just after money. They just after money. They just want to make money. And they're out on the street today. Yesterday they were out on the street. You can't walk by you. They're looking at you like they want to do something, like they're packing something. I don't know what they're doing. But you know what I'm saying is, this is a great building. I know this neighborhood. I jog there all the time and stuff like that. But it really boggles your mind a lot. It boggles your mind a lot, you know, because your rights are abridged. You have no rights. Okay, you don't exist. Okay, and this is a developer that's doing that. Okay. This is a developer that's doing that. All right.
Thank you much. Seeing no other speakers here in the chamber, Mr. Lamb, if you could unmute our caller, please.
Hello, Supervisors. David Wu with the Coalition for a Complete Community at 730 Stanyan, or CCC for short. a coalition made up of nonprofit service providers in the Haight, residents, workers, and community members. And we came together years ago to support the development of this housing on this site and for ground floor uses that reflect the community of Tay families with children and seniors. And the CCC has also held 2 public one-day events at the empty lot at 730 Stanyan that included Tay services and senior services, and those events drew over 200 people each time and were widely supported by all residents and everyone who stopped by, and we had 0 complaints. Up until April 4th, 2023, all iterations of the project have included, as part of the ground floor uses, a Tay drop-in center that will be open to the public and run by a community-based nonprofit. And you heard about how this has been represented in financing documents and public meetings. And it wasn't until last month in April, only 2 months before construction that's set to begin, that all references to a drop-in center were removed with no explanation or public process. And there has been no solicitation yet for Tay services. And as you heard, there are Tay service providers in the Haight that are working to secure funding to provide services on this site in this space. So there is work being done by the community to activate this space for Tay services, but we don't have a commitment now from MOHCD. And there have been 7 developer-led community meetings and more community meetings that were held prior to this by MOHCD. So the inclusion of Tay service space has been publicly discussed many, many, many times, and I'm not entirely sure what there is to revisit, and it was included for a reason.
So sorry to cut you off, David Wu, but we are timing each speaker at 2 minutes today. Madam Chair, that completes our queue.
Thank you. Seeing no more public comment is now closed. Colleagues, I have some questions about just the process that took place, and it's in. I want to say that I'm grateful to actually have the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Center as well as Chinatown Community Development Center to actually collaboratively, even though the scoring was interesting, the additional questionnaires that had to send out didn't quite explain the reasoning being why that had to be. But I think that for this, really, I think that I say that I'm grateful because everyone in this space recognized that housing needs to be built in this area is really needed. And therefore, people actually do come together recognizing that like there are things that are bigger than all of us here, that it's also the reason why we do the work that we do is to serve our community and making sure that we keep the promise that that we made, be it policymakers or city departments, that we're here to build housing and keep people housed. And with that, I also think that, I have to say, again, this I can see that through the documents or the information provided by Supervisor Preston, be it in the development plan, be it the, in your application to the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, and then also from the feedback from the public comments, from the community. Clearly, there was a very clear discussion about the use of ground floor being for the dedicated for the purpose of serving the transitional age youth, short for Tay, long for Tay. And so I want to say that with that I am in support of inserting that amending this legislation, inserting the amendment with this language that was read earlier by Supervisor Preston, and it's on page 6, line 22, and I think it's not direct amendments to the loan documents, but just simply to the legislation urging the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development to do so. So with that, Mr. Clerk, I would like to make the motion to amend the legislation, which is item number 4 on page 6, line 22, amended as inserting the further resolve clause as read out loud by Supervisor Preston. And with that, please call the roll.
On that motion, to amend item number 4 with the language as offered by Supervisor Preston, Vice Chair Mandelman. Mandelman, no. Member Safai. Safai, aye. Chair Chan.
Aye.
Chan, aye. We have 2 ayes with Vice Chair Mandelman in dissent.
Thank you. And with that, I would like to send these 2 items to the full board with recommendation. And with that, please also call the roll.
On that motion, to forward items 3 and 4 to the full board with a positive recommendation. Item 4 as amended. Vice Chair Mandelman. Mandelman, aye. Member Safai. Safai, aye. Chair Chan.
Aye.
Chan, aye. We have 3 ayes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you. And Mr. Clerk, could you please call, I know that, but they're actually both in the mayor's office, so I'm just going to call item 5 and 6 together.
Very well. Item number 5 is a resolution approving and authorizing the director of the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development to execute documents relating to a loan agreement with SFCLT TNFF Holdings LLC in an aggregate total amount not to exceed $18.8 million to finance the acquisition, rehabilitation, and permanent refinancing of 4 existing affordable multifamily rental housing projects for low to moderate income households known as SFCLT scattered sites, consisting of a total of 36 rental units and 4 buildings located at 2840 to 2848 Folsom Street, 4042 to 4048 Fulton Street, 568 to 570 Natoma Street, and 308 Turk Street, and to construct 1 accessory dwelling unit at 4042 to 4048 Fulton Street, pursuant to the Small Sites Program, affirming the Planning Department's determination under CEQA, adopting findings that the project and the proposed transactions are consistent with the general plan and the 8 priority policies of the Planning Code, and authorizing the director of MoCD and or his or her designee to execute the loan agreements for the project and make certain modifications to the loan documents and to take certain actions in furtherance of the resolution. And item number 6 is a resolution approving and authorizing the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing to apply the California Department of Housing and Community Development for a home key grant for the property located at 1174 to 1178 Folsom Street and 663 Clementina Street in an amount not to exceed approximately $14.7 million on behalf of the city and county. Members of the public who are joining us remotely and wish to comment on these 2 resolutions, please call 415-655-0001. Enter the meeting ID of 2604-967-6141. Then press pound twice, and once connected, press star 3 to enter the speaker line. A prompt will indicate that you have raised your hand, and when the system indicates you have been unmuted, there will be your signal to begin your comments. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. It's my mistake. It's Mayor's Office of Housing and then the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. Nonetheless, we call the items together, but let's go with presentation one by one, and then with the comments, and then we can collectively go to public comments for the 2 items together. State your first name and last name, title, and the divisions that you represent. After your presentation, we go to budget and legislative analyst report because this item has it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Chan, Vice Chair Mandelman, and Supervisor Safai. My name is Amanda Fugatomi Lopez, and I'm a project manager for the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. Before you today is a request for the permanent refinancing of 4 small sites properties currently owned by the San Francisco Community Land Trust. This includes 568 Natoma, 4042 Fulton, 308 Turk, and 2840 Folsom. There are 36 existing units among these 4 sites. The Small Sites Program is one of 4 preservation programs that is administered by the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, along with the Preservation and Seismic Safety Program, or PASS, which offers first position hard debt financing at a below market rate, and the Downtown Neighborhood Preservation Fund and RAD rehabilitations. The Small Sites Program helps low to moderate income San Franciscans avoid displacement or eviction. SSP buildings are converted from rent control to permanently affordable housing to keep rents affordable for the long term and to protect tenants. The program protects the widest range of household incomes, and since the program started in 2014, over 660 units have been converted to permanently affordable housing. Importantly, the Small Sites Program funds critical life and safety repairs of San Francisco buildings, improving quality of life for residents, and invests in a sustainable CBO ecosystem. Small sites loans are soft debt loans which require a first position lender. Prior to the introduction of PASS, small sites receive first position funding from traditional lenders. These lenders typically offered 10-year loan terms with 5 to 7 year fixed rate. Because of needed refinancing at year 10, early small sites projects only provided replacement reserves to fund needed capital improvement costs for 10 years. It was expected that small sites would then refinance their first position loans and use the refinancing proceeds to cover years 11 through 20 capital improvements at that time. With the introduction of PASS financing, which along with SSP has a 40-year term, 20 years of capital improvement needs are now covered. Now, projects are expected to refinance to cover additional capital needs for future years with refinancing at year 20. SFCLT is requesting up to $5 million in PASS funds, along with up to an additional $4.7 million in SSP funding, for a total of up to $13.8 million in SSP funding for the permanent refinancing and payoff of the first position loans that have reached their maturity dates. Up to $5 million in PASS funds will be added to the project utilizing low-cost financing that was not available at the time of each building's acquisition, and the project's 4 existing individual SSP loans will be recapitalized into one bundled loan to all 4 properties. By bundling the projects, we are streamlining the refinancing process, reducing finance and administrative costs, and helping to create a more sustainable portfolio by allowing projects to pool their resources in the form of shared reserves. The refinance will also help fund capital need improvements along with the construction of an ADU. SFCLT is one of the first small sites developers with a total of approximately 70 units acquired across 10 sites. The bundled refinance is critical to the long-term sustainability of the 4 properties in SFCLT's portfolio growth. Should you have any additional questions regarding the 4 sites bundle, Samir Habash, Director of Asset Management and Finance from SFCLT, is here to answer any questions. And if you have any additional questions about the Small Sites Program, MoCD Director of Preservation, Johnny Oliver, is here. Thank you.
Thank you. BLA report.
Item 5 is a resolution approving a loan agreement, $18.8 million loan agreement with the Community Land Trust to refinance debt on 4 existing small sites projects that we detail on page 19 of our report. The purpose of the loan is to pay off high-cost private debt, to pay for capital improvements on the 4 sites, and to replenish the operating reserves at those 4 sites. We detailed the use of funds on page 24 of our report, and we did have a recommendation to adjust the resolutions not to exceed amount to be consistent with the final loan amount, which is $18.7 million. And we recommend approval as amended.
Thank you. Vice Chair Mendelman.
Thank you, Chair Chan, and thanks to staff at MoCD for your work on small sites and to make our small sites portfolio sustainable over time. And I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to this item.
Thank you. And let's go to see no more comments and questions and names on the roster. Let's go to public comment on this item. Oh, wait, sorry. Actually, we call the items together. With that, and let's go to the next item for presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Chan, members of the committee. I'm Emily Cohen with the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. I'm here today about a resolution that would authorize the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing to apply for the 3rd round of home key funds at the state for the project for the property at 1174 Folsom. The resolution would allow HSH to submit a home key grant application to the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and this is the 3rd round of this funding. There is $736 million available statewide for this project, and HCD will be receiving applications on a continuous basis through the end of July of this year, or until all available funds are exhausted, which is why we're trying to get this in as quickly as possible. The total not to exceed amount for this application for the property at 1174-78 Folsom is $14.7 million, or the maximum amount allowed under the Home Key Award. If awarded, the grant would go to support the acquisition and operations of this property for use as permanent housing for young adults leaving homelessness. Legislation to authorize the acquisition for this project will be introduced to the board in the next week or two. The property itself is beautiful, relatively new construction, 42-unit building in Soma, and really is ideal for this type of housing. Studio apartments with private bathrooms, ample indoor and outdoor community space for the residents to hang out. It was built in 2001, has on-site laundry, elevator, close proximity to public transportation, all the things that we look for in housing. The size of 42 units is ideal for the community building work we like to do within youth housing, and we're really excited to move this proposal forward. San Francisco has been extremely successful in leveraging state home key resources, and this has been a tremendous asset in addition to the city's funds for this acquisition strategies for both apartment buildings and hotels. If we receive this grant, it would be our 7th Home Key Award, and so far we have received over $212 million in rounds 1 and 2 of Home Key and acquired 6 properties with 779 units in that portfolio. So really a significant expansion to our supportive housing portfolio, including 2 projects already done for young adults that are open and operating and going quite well. So really excited to bring this project before you today, and I'm also joined by Dan Adams from our housing acquisition lead if you have any questions for either of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Safai.
I just want to say thank you. I think this is building on the previous presentation, because here we are purchasing a building that is designed, dedicated, and focused on transitional age youth. That community has one of the highest, if not the highest, rates of potential homelessness. Many of them are foster children growing out of foster care and are asked to take care of themselves in a very abrupt manner. So as I said previously, we did the one in Mission Inn. We're working on ensuring that that has every single aspect for success. It's going along very well. I see Larkin Street Youth Services in the audience again, and I know that they're one of the providers that we work with out there. And then just to transition to the Home Key program, we had that conversation, we had this hearing a couple of years ago when that money was being made available during COVID. I was a loud voice and champion for that. There is no other more efficient, quicker, cost-effective way to expand our housing stock for permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, or housing for formerly homeless or shelter, than by taking existing buildings. And so I'm super excited about this. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor for 5 and 6. My only question is, it looks like this property has existing tenants. I don't know if you mentioned that, how you plan on dealing with that, or what is the transition there, or some of those residents potentially, what's the word I'm looking for, qualify or for that. I don't believe they would. So how is the existing tenant situation dealt with? But again, thank you to Dan. He's done a phenomenal job. We brought him back to work with us, and he's been a great partner along with HSH and Emily and others. But I'm super happy about this. And I mean, when you look at the building, it's beautiful. And both of the buildings are beautiful.
Thank you, Supervisor, for your support and for your ongoing support of the project in your district. In terms of existing tenants, there are some existing tenants. They would not qualify for ongoing housing in this property. So we are working with a relocation consultant, and we'll be following relocation policy to support them in finding new places to live.
Great. And is there anyone from MOACD still here? I guess my question is, about 2 years ago with the Small Sites Program, there was money sitting there. There was a request to add money from the reserve. I know this board did that. And then there was a discussion about reforming and redirecting the direction of the Small Sites Program. This is more of a refinance of existing properties, correct? But it might be good to get a quick update on how is that reform happening with the Small Sites Program, and how is the strength of that program looking right now? We had $10 million sitting that had not been utilized. There were a number of different desires from a lot of individuals and opportunities like HomeKey all over the city for potential purposes, for purchases. And so it would be great to hear how that's going. I know there was a commitment made by the mayor and the Office of Community Development to reform and reinvigorate the program. So it would be good to hear about that.
Good afternoon. I can speak to the updates to our Small Sites Program guidelines, which have expanded the typology that our program allows funding for. We have also added additional sponsors to our pool of QNPs, qualified nonprofits, with the goal of not only expanding the geographic location, but also the typology and population that we serve. As far as an update, we have an ongoing list of potential prospect projects. In some cases, some of these are very large sites that exceed the amount of current preservation dollars that we have. There's a combination of PASS on the front end, that is a first position financing, and preservation financing / SSP on the back end. So when a project comes in requesting $30 million in preservation funding on top of $10 million in PASS, we don't have that currently in our budget. So those have been on our hold list, if you will. They do meet the per unit subsidy requirements. They now meet our rubric scoring requirements. There just is not enough funding to cover those, so they have been on hold at the moment. There is always projects in the hopper, if you will. We are working with sponsors now where they are working to either get into contract, work to ensure that all of the different tenants are on board with the conversion of the building. So at any given time, there could be 4 to 5 projects that are in queue to eventually be earmarked for our preservation dollars.
I know that we approved a project that was part of the Academy of Arts settlement that was a lot larger than a normal purchase, but it was very specific funding. Have there been small sites purchases in the last year?
Acquisitions, yes. We traditionally acquire a site through the San Francisco Housing Accelerator Fund. At the moment, the cost of those funds are exceedingly high. We are in the process of developing a strategy to acquire those sites with MOCD funding directly. That comes with additional challenges, such as higher cost of construction.
So none of the transfers from the Housing Accelerator Fund have happened? They've purchased the properties and we're waiting for the financing to make sense?
They've purchased the property with their funding, completed construction, or in the process of completing construction, and those projects are now in queue for a permanent takeout by MOCD funding.
And have the nonprofits been assigned to work with those groups? Or is it the Housing Accelerator Fund in partnership with a nonprofit?
So the sponsors
Correct.
bring those projects forward, and
Right.
in requesting the funding, it's a dual approval process.
Right.
MOCD is earmarking and approving the initial support of the project, with the Accelerator Fund providing the initial funding. Most recently, we did acquire 3661 19th Street here in our Supervisor Mandelman's district. That is a direct funded project by MOCD, where we did not go the Accelerator Fund route, but in an attempt to stop the LS Act eviction of the residents there, we felt that it was important to move quickly, and we will be starting construction on that project very soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Supervisor Safai, and let's go to public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public who wish to speak on both of these items and are joining us in person should line up now along the curtains. For those who have joined us remotely and haven't already done so, press *3 to enter the speaker line. And for those already in the queue, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted, and that'll be your signal to begin your comments.
Hi, Supervisors. Marnie Regan, Larkin Street, also co-chair of HESPA and chair of the TAY subcommittee of HESPA. And we just want to offer our wholeheartedly 100% support of HSH applying for home key funds for 1174 Folsom. This makes complete sense to acquire and access state funds in a time of a city budget deficit. We've advocated, the TAY system of care has advocated really strongly for a TAY set aside for these home key funds. And it would make sense to get these funds and to set aside this beautiful supportive housing site for transitional age youth. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Marnie Regan, for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Supervisor Sherilyn Adams, Larkin Street Youth Services. Speaking in support of item 6, of course we love small sites. 42 units of housing in Soma is perfect for young people. We fought hard, as Marnie said, to have a TAY set aside in home key funds. We could not be more excited to have state funds coming in to build more housing for young people. We are desperately in need of it. So full support for this project and this resolution. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Charles Defarge, Director of Policy with ECS. We provide supportive housing to more than 2,000 formerly homeless San Franciscans, many of whom will be neighbors to the proposed Folsom Home Key project. I'm here to voice our strong support for the acquisition of 1174 Folsom. This is an opportunity to provide high-quality, dignified housing for 42 young people, ending their homelessness and putting them on a path to long-term stability. I do want to briefly address some of the concerns that I've heard throughout this process, specifically around crime and drug use. I work every day at 8th and Howard and share some of the same concerns, but I want to be super clear that permanent supportive housing is not the cause of these issues. We operate multiple housing sites for different populations within this community, and none of these sites have become inundated with crime. In addition to housing, we provide workforce programs, senior center out of these buildings. They've become an asset to the community as well as their residents. So 1174 Folsom, with appropriate staffing, community engagement, as well as a good neighbor policy, can and will be a positive presence in the neighborhood. Thank you so much for your support and your leadership on this urgent issue.
Thank you, Charles Defarge, for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Yes, I want to start, and I'm glad to see it. I think the majority of supervisors are supporting the acquisition of 1174 or whatever it is the city does. During Mussolini's reign, the fascists in Italy in the 1940s, 1930, the definition of fascism has since then been defined as the merger of corporations and government, as we saw in Citizens United here in the United States. I would just like to say that I attended the Zoom last Thursday. There were many property owners, many business owners, many residential owners, Chinese Americans, Black American, Indian American, Arab American, that spoke against it because they said of the drugs. To me, it smacks of fascism, because we have a supervisor who used to be a drug addict, and everybody listens to him. How can we solve drug addiction? Yet he is against any kind of drugs. The people at that building said that the tenants there would be allowed to use legal drugs, and if they do have the drugs, they follow the same rules as any other city-sponsored building. Drugs, as I've said before, why they use drugs, I know why they use drugs. If you are out there homeless, you want some kind of reprieve. You want to be able to feel like you don't have any problems. Other reasons I understand. And like I said before, people use drugs, but the people that have money can go to museums, to operas, to symphonies, to ballets. People that have no money, they turn to drugs. So I'm addressing all those in that community that said that part of the community is ripe with drugs. Think of the poor.
Thank you much. Next speaker, please.
Community Land Trust is a perfect example. San Francisco CLT. People throw acronyms out here. You know, you got to get down to the bottom of what they are. Community Land Trust. A couple of ragtag San Francisco tenants got together and decided to form this nonprofit. And it's here today. It's going to the mayor's office across City Hall here, asking for $18 million. Yeah, $18 million. And you're going to get some $18 million, but you don't want to fix my houses. So it's okay. It's okay. It's all right. No problem. But what I'm asking is, we got to look at this very carefully and decide whether or not there's a crime here committed. You have to decide that as a board, as a committee. You have to decide whether $18 million is a crime or not. You got to do it. You got to look at this. Because it's not exactly what it looks like here. It's not what it looks. It's not how it appears. Okay? This is just not a loan. This is not the taxpayers' money going to a nonprofit as a loan. Okay? This is something else. This is something else. It's very, very different. We need to get a committee together. We need to get a group of people together to look at this and decide what really is it. What is it? What the hell is this? What is it? You know, it blows your mind. This is just so crazy. I can't believe it. I never thought it would happen to me. I thought I was going to be the one that's going to, nobody from my side is going to lose. Nobody on my side loses, but I lost. And when you're a soldier, you can't take losses. Now, when you're a soldier like me, I'm a soldier. Okay?
Thank you much. Seeing no more speakers here in the chamber, Mr. Lamb, if you could unmute your caller, please.
Hi, thank you, supervisors. My name is Karen Adams, and I work for Homeless Youth Alliance. Wanted to give my strong support for this project and resolution, and thank HSH. TAY service providers have been advocating for years, if not decades, for smaller sites for youth permanent supportive housing, and with the inclusion of kitchens to help accomplish food security and bathrooms. And there is a lot on the table with supporting this site because it has the potential and possibility to move us in a direction of providing luxury, dignity, adequate, safe housing for our young people. And again, Homeless Youth Alliance is in full support of this resolution. It is what the young people themselves have been asking for, to have housing that is located in safer neighborhoods to which they have identified this neighborhood to be. And thank you so much, and look forward to this passing.
Thank you, Karen Adams. Mr. Lamb, next speaker, please.
Hi, this is Danielle Alkov. I'm a family physician with the San Francisco Department of Public Health. I work with a lot of youth who are unhoused, who are experiencing addiction and many forms of trauma in their lives. And I have seen such a huge improvement in what happens to them when they are able to find housing that is supportive and allows them access to really work on other things that are their goals in life. And I also see when people are not able to find housing, the things that they turn to can really lead to their downfall and not being able to survive in the world. And I've had too many young people who I've lost because of those things happening. I understand that there was a lot of concern over substance use with the housing that's being proposed. And I think that someone trying to change their life and use substances less can only be supported in that by having housing. So the inability to find a place to live only worsens folks' addiction, and this would be a great step in people who are working towards sobriety to get there. So I really encourage the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing to get that home key grant to get the property at 1174 Folsom, because I'm hoping that I don't have to watch any more of my patients die this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alka, for your comments. Mr. Lamb, next speaker, please.
Hi there. My name is Seneca Sperling. I live at 36 Roush Street. I'm a property owner here, and myself and my family strongly support this project, the one on Folsom Street, which will be around the corner for us for supportive housing for youths. I don't want to repeat all of the things people have already said in favor, so I won't take more of your time. I just wanted to register our support of this project. We think it's very important for the youth, and we think that we do not share the concerns that others do in our neighborhood about the rules about drug use and paying rent and those kinds of things for this property and its use. We do support the project as it is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you much for addressing this committee. Mr. Lamb, next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is LJ Johnson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked with homeless youth for over 14 years, 7 of those years in San Francisco. I'm speaking in strong support of this resolution and my work with LGBTQ youth at Dimensions Clinic with the Department of Public Health in San Francisco. The youth I see experience extreme marginalization. This funding is essential to the health and safety of youth in our city. Our youth desperately need stable and well-supported housing in order to build full and well-supported lives. This is a critical intervention point for our youth that will prevent increasing harm in the future. I've witnessed countless youth try and fail to access housing through available resources. We need more permanent supportive housing to keep them safe. As a mental health provider, I know that without a doubt, housing is mental health care. Thank you to the committee for your support of this measure.
Thank you much, LJ Johnson. Mr. Lamb, do we have any more speakers?
Hi, my name is Martha Brightigan. I've lived for 26 years on the same block as this building, and I'm very strongly in favor of the city's acquisition of 1174, 1178 Folsom for TAY supportive housing. This is a good architect's building. It's great public money may be available for this very necessary project. Contrary to a petition circulated among some of my neighbors, Folsom Street is not too fragile to provide apartments for some young people in trouble. And I'm really proud to say this project is entirely consistent with our neighborhood character. For the past 150 plus years, South of Market has always been a place people look to as a place of refuge, a place of safety, a place where it's safe to be in trouble or different. And when young people come out of abusive situations in small towns, they make it to San Francisco, they're looking for refuge, they expect a welcome. That creates a moral obligation on us as a city. And, we need to meet that obligation. This is a great way to do it. And this is not a proposal for an institutional nightly shelter, which some of the neighbors seem to think. They may not even understand this is going to be apartments, long-term stability for kids at transitional times in their lives when they can settle and make good lives in the city and be good San Franciscans for a long time. So very much in favor, and, please consider that some neighbors do support this very strongly. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments. Mr. Lamb, if we have any more speakers.
Hi, my name is Esteban Rodriguez. I'm a nurse at Dimensions Queer Youth Clinic here in San Francisco. I've worked with queer youth for about 16 years here in the city, and I just want to say I wholeheartedly support acquiring the funds from Project Home Key for this. Queer youth are continuing to move to San Francisco, and as older generations have less and less housing to offer them that's affordable, they strongly are going to need housing such as this. So I definitely support this. They need a place to grow, to foster, to see a future for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you much, Esteban Rodriguez, for your comments. And Madam Chair, that does conclude our queue.
Thank you. Seeing no more public comments is now closed. And I just really want to thank the Mayor's Office of Housing on the small sites acquisitions and the partnership with Community Land Trust. And I'm also grateful that one of the properties out of which located in the Richmond, we have actually the second highest buyout rate in the city. And that small sites acquisition is actually really critical to stabilizing tenants in the Richmond. I know that has been a practice that has been very impactful row. So with that, I would say I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, and with that also to make the motion to amend item number 5 as recommended by the budget and legislative analysts. And with that, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
On that motion to amend the resolution in item 5 to reduce the not to exceed amount from 18.8 to 18.7 million, Vice Chair Mandelman.
Aye.
Mandelman, aye. Member Safai. Safai, aye. Chair Chan.
Aye.
Chan, aye. We have 3 ayes.
Thank you. And then I would like to move both item numbers 5 and 6 with recommendation to full board. And with that, please call roll.
And on that motion to forward both resolutions to the full board with a positive recommendation, item 5 as amended, Vice Chair Mandelman.
Aye.
Mandelman, aye. Member Safai. Safai, aye. Chair Chan.
Aye.
Chan, aye. We have 3 ayes.
Thank you. And just wanted to note that we will have the Budget and Appropriation Committee actually technically scheduled right for 1:30 today. I think we're going to come in at 1:45 instead. Is that? You can be 5 minutes late. And then 1:45 today. And so, Mr. Clerk, do we have any other business before us?
Madam Chair, that concludes the business for this committee.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.